Porque tenemos a Claire Silver, que es una artista digital AI y habla en inglés, y tenemos aquí también otro artista, a Oliver Halsman Roseberg, que nos va a acompañar también en inglés. Y a vos te vamos a cambiar al inglés, si no hay problema, hacer el switch. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Claire, for being here. I don't know if you're going to set your avatar.
Yes, I am. I just have to give me just a second here.
Okay. Well, we'll start the conversation here with Oliver.
Hi, Claire.
He's here as well.
Hey there.
Oliver is one of the curators of our exhibit, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. He has a very close relationship, his family, to Dali's family, and we're very happy to have him here precisely so that he can talk to us a little bit more about all these issues that we're facing with AI and IP, and how that translates into his work in particular, and the curation of this exhibit as well.
Oh gosh, where do I start? So much.
Just introduce yourself, that'll be fine. And meanwhile, we'll have
My
Claire.
name's Oliver Halsman Rosenberg. I'm from New York City. I'm an artist. I come from an artistic family. My mom was an art teacher, and my grandparents were photographers. And my grandfather, I managed his estate as well as I do my own art. And he is most known for like 100 life covers, iconic photographs of Marilyn Monroe and Einstein and JFK and Hitchcock and Audrey Hepburn, and as well as working with Salvador Dali for 37 years, doing a lot of collaborative, all the kind of crazy photos you've seen of Dali. Most of them were probably taken by my grandfather. So I come from a very creative background, and also my grandfather was an engineer, so he was very interested in technical stuff. So this puts me at the intersection as like an artist, someone who's interested in technical things, and also an estate representative. So everything is kind of coming together here at GM Barcelona. Also, Claire and I co-curated this exhibit in the other room over there of all the work. It was an open call for work inspired by Dali. So yeah, just happy to be here. Also next to some other legacy on my right with, I'm a big Gaudi fan, so.
Yeah, I'm Claire Silver. I'm an AI collaborative artist. Huge fan of Dali, although I think that Oliver might have me beat there. And I was so honored and thrilled to be able to help curate this exhibition. I wish I could be there, but this is probably the best I'm going to be able to do.
So since we're going to be talking about AI, I want to start by asking you a little bit about this misconception about AI art, right? So many of us have heard about it, but maybe for this audience, it's not so obvious. Tell us a little bit about what we have encountered people as the misconception for AI.
The main misconception that I hear is that AI is theft. And the reason for that is that people think that AI looks at images and kind of steals and collages them together into what you've asked for in your prompt. And that's not the way that AI works. If I use John Singer Sargent in a prompt as an artist, it doesn't take pieces of his art and kind of batch them together into my new art piece I'm asking for. What it does is it learns traits about whatever you ask it for. So it learns that Sargent was a painter, and that he often painted people, and that he might paint them with this quality of light or that sort of brushstroke. And then it takes all those things that it's learned and it imagines something new, which is how our minds work as well. It's influence, not stealing. So maybe that's a fine line morally for some people. For me, it makes things very clear. That's the biggest misconception that I can think of with AI right now.
And Gary, have you encountered this issue, especially with AI art, of this idea that it's stolen, that it's not true art? You know, there's a lot of backlash to AI art. What would you say?
There's a lot of fear around us. But it's just a matter of time that we understand it better and accept it. Same fear happened when the calculator was invented. Teachers at school thought, oh, they're not going to learn maths anymore because they can just calc it, and that didn't happen. And same happened again when the computers, the laptops appeared. Then they're going to have so many resources that nobody's going to study, and that didn't happen either. So all the digital art and the AI as main driver is again generating this fear of wow, now that can be copied or redo it or reinterpret. And no, it's just a new funnel of information, of ways of doing things, but fear will go away.
And it happened also with photography in a way, right? When photography first started, people were like, well, it's not really art because it's the camera doing the work, it's not the person doing the work. So how you probably have a lot to say in that, especially.
Yeah. So the camera was a technical tool. Like in the beginning, people weren't. It was experimental. People weren't really looking at photography as an art necessarily. At that point, it was just like working out the kinks. Like how can we reproduce it well? What's the right level of chemistry we need to get the right effect? I think really what's similar with the AI movement to now is like the printing press and the mass printing of images. Like once photography got to be reproduced in magazines around the turn of the last century, then you had all these artists making collages. Like a lot of the early Dadaist artists were, using what little print sources they had at that point, and they were starting, like as Claire said, you're just being influenced by the material. So now the AI is kind of making these collages instead of us, but what it did was it produced a whole new art form, which was collage that people had never done before industrial printing. So this is similar to AI now, and then out of collage, then artists like Robert Rauschenberg and Silkscreen and like Warhol, and this leads to this. So it's this AI is just like another stepping stone on the point of like human evolution and like artistic creation. Like art is technology. When the first chisels were invented and people could, carve into marble, then eventually, you had the Greco-Roman period, and the form of the human form got more and more sophisticated as the tools got more sophisticated. So art has always been married to technology, even the brushes versus like doing finger painting on like cave walls versus now you can go to Japan and get nice calligraphy brushes from all different sorts of animal hair. So now we're just at another, plateau or jumping off point for creators with like a brand new tool to create with. So it's a fascinating time to be alive. I just feel like with the metaverse and NFTs and AI and blockchain, like we're just at this digital renaissance, and
And that's spoken as a true artist, but I want to play a little bit of devil's advocates here for both of you from the foundation side. So you have your grandfather's foundation, and obviously you have. How do you see that from that perspective? Because as an artist, it's very, I wouldn't say easy to justify it, but it is a new tool, right? It's just a different tool, and there's been so many tools, as you mentioned. But from the foundation side, at least what I've encountered, a lot of them are obviously scared, as you said, and they will change with time. But they are worried about the IP of their work, right? And how it's treated, and how, there's so many IP laws that don't really address what's coming with AI. So how have either one of you have encountered that issue?
Sure. Like as Claire mentioned, it's like the AI learns traits. So I'll be talking about this later in my workshop, but there's different ways the AI you can either use a prompt to generate imagery, or you can like put in initial imagery. And I think the risk for foundations are that, people just do like, basic derivatives from like the intellectual property that you are the caretaker of. So for instance, for my grandfather, I have to manage that legacy, and copyright law in the United States is different from copyright law in Europe. So people have to understand that to keep the lights on in the archive and pay for storage, and just to manage an archive, you need resources, and like the copyright helps protect the artists. And I think a lot of artists in the AI space now are too young to realize that, you know, I happen to manage an archive, so I have like both perspectives of working with like a dead artist estate and being a living artist who's just not thinking about that stuff at all. But like once you create a body of work and you want it to live on in the future, like, you know, no one would be thinking about my grandfather in the same way that they are now if we didn't have the resources to pay me to caretake the archive, and when requests come in, you know, send out scans and keep the light on for the storage. So I think it's important to educate people about the importance of copyright. But then there are things that are in the open domain, and like John Singer Sargent, maybe that work is in the public domain, and there's plenty of material in the public domain. So it is a little devil. I can see both sides of the argument, you know, quite well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I'm not as educated about this as you are, Oliver. But my inclination has always been that, you know, if there's an artist like Dali, for example, that people are already familiar with, then any derivative sort of works are only going to drive attention back to the original. Like there are a lot of artists that I didn't really know, that I only know because people started using them in their prompts in their AI work, and I loved the aesthetic. And so in reverse image searching the aesthetic and finding similar looking sort of styles, I would figure out new artists. But I think that blockchain has a lot to say for this. It's such a natural marriage with AI for living artists that are concerned about IP. Anyone could take my art and train a model on it and make work that looks similar to mine. In fact, I think a few people have. I can't do anything about that. But what blockchain does is put a verifiable timestamp on those ideas, that aesthetic, that style, that technique. And so I think that with that technological innovation, it again drives attention sort of back to the original. So it's sort of like memes in that, you know, the more people spread them around and adapt them and use them, the more it sort of drives attention back to the original. But I could be wrong on that. Again, I'm not an expert, but that's always been my inclination.
The IP issue, it's not new. It has always been here, and concerning ones and others. It's just that all of a sudden rules have become outdated because of the digital massive flow of proposals. And when you think about a digital artwork, we all think, at least I think, oh, that's very easy to copy, no? Because it's an image, so you just copy paste it, and then how do you protect the artwork? And in fact, the digital art is far more protected than the analogic or plastic art, because there's been a lot of paintings that have been sold being copied by another artist. And actually, if a very renowned painter would copy La Mona Lisa, probably most of us would mistake signaling which one is the correct one. Whereas blockchain and all the technology that's beyond the NFTs and that protects and encrypts and marks all the originals is way more protected from an IP perspective than what was before.
Right, there's a way of tracing it, so you can know what's a copy or not, and influence is different than copying, right?
And I think it's like, it depends on motivation too. I mean, Claire and I are artists. We're trying to create something new out of, you know, the influences of the history of art. And yeah, art is a conversation. Art is a conversation with all the other artists who have come before you. So you can't just say like, no, you're not allowed to have a conversation with this person or that person. But, oh, I lost my train of thought. Okay.
That happens. Well, so continue as an example of that as well. I mean, it's the inspiration is Dali, right? So we're not, the artists are not stealing from.
I just remembered. So
okay, go.
My friend Juan Manuel, the director of the Dali Fundacio, couldn't make it today, but we had an interesting call a couple weeks ago, and he was saying, okay, so this is going back to the intention. So I think the risks are like people who are going to use the AI and they're not trying to create a new work, but they're just trying to knock off the style just enough. He was telling me about an exhibit in China where they had done this illegal Dali exhibit. It was an AI exhibit, and it just sounded like they hadn't really done much creative stuff, just done slight variations of the copyrighted original work and then produced it as a new show and used the DALL-E name to get people to come in. So I think like that's from the institutional level and the foundation level, I think that's more of the cringy moments of like, well, there needs to be like legal new frameworks and understandings in place so people just don't take your name and do slight, you know, AI variations of the work and then kind of, you know, give it to an audience who might not know better.
And it goes a little bit back to the idea of, you know, respecting the past and, you know, pushing it still forward. Claire, do you want to tell us a little bit about the exhibit, the curation of the exhibit? Both Claire and Oliver curated the pieces there from over 400 entries we did during an open call. And those were the 30 pieces selected. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your thought process when you were curating? And there's also a DALL-E-inspired piece by Claire there that I invite all of you to go see. It's an AR piece. So.
Yeah, gosh, so there were so many incredible entries. It was an open call, and it was very difficult to parse through all of those and select just a small number of them because there were so many thoughtful, beautiful entries. But we managed, and actually Oliver and I had quite a bit of overlap in our selections, which was comforting to me. I tried to select for work that was inspired by DALL-E's innovative sort of spirit, the dreamlike kind of aesthetics that speak to me, but not work that just tried to look like a DALL-E, you know? I was definitely trying to select for the spirit of the thing rather than the visual of the thing. And I think Oliver would say the same, although he had a level of understanding and depth necessarily that I didn't. But again, that's why it was comforting that we had some overlap. As for my piece, I have a particular aesthetic. I often feature women, kind of mysterious, powerful sort of women. And so I wanted to do that in a way that spoke to DALL-E's innovation and multimedia work. And so I made an AR piece, so you can scan it, the QR code over there with your phone, and it makes a 3D sculpture that you can place in the room around you. First time doing that, first time using AR in that way. And so that was going out on a limb for me, and it was a cool experience. It was special. And actually Oliver scanned it and it came up headless, which he said was very DALL-E, and I thought was super cool.
Yeah. How about you, Oliver? What was your insight when you were curating over 400 pieces and trying to reduce it to 15?
I was just impressed by the talent in the space. I mean, okay, it's an open call, so not everyone is going to necessarily see it and engage with it, but a lot of my favorite artists in the space submitted something. Some people, I found their natural work more surreal than the stuff they submitted, so, which was funny. But like Claire said, I tried not to pick anything that looked like an AI DALL-E remix, but more work that was inspired by the writing or the thought process, or had like little ideas that DALL-E explored in a specific painting, and then they kind of took that to the next level. And just because I grew up around so many DALL-E catalogs as a kid, like I'm so familiar with his body of work, and you know, just like I recognize that one from this painting. That so I was able to pick up on more of the. Yeah, I just wanted to elevate the voices of the people who took the open call seriously, to learn about DALL-E through the open call too. A lot of people in there, when they submitted it, they said, yeah, it was cool. I looked back and I found this thing, or I liked this quote, or I was inspired by this. So, you know, I think this is, I know Accelerate Art is interested in this, like bridging, like using artists from the past to bridge new artists. So I thought this was a good idea, and it's a way to honor the past too, not just to reference the style, but to also understand the intentions of the artists and their body of work and do something more thoughtful. And yeah, there was just so much, there weren't enough screens. There was too much work that I wanted to get in the show, but.
And Gary, I'm going to put you a little bit in the spot. I don't know if you've had a chance to look around a little bit. What do you think of exhibitions like this that bring in the digital artists?
In the essence is pretty much the same as we are doing with welcoming artists at Casa Batlló, so that they get inspired with his body of work and create their artworks. Or I mean, the purpose, I guess, is the same, no? Is to take all the value that Dalí has created all along his years with his thousands of paintings and artworks as inspiration items, so that others can start from a great point instead of scratch or just random inspiration. So it's awesome. That is a great artist.
Yeah, and for us, it's been great because we've noticed that a lot of artists actually dug deep, right? So, of course, most, if not all, knew Dalí, but many spent the time to study him, study his work or his life. So it gives it a little bit of education there that we always think it's interesting for all of us. I mean, I learned from it just through doing this. So we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to give you each an opportunity to give your thoughts on how do you see this going forward. We've been spending the last couple of days talking about Web3 and the metaverse and the new technologies and how those are going to impact brands in the future, how they're going to impact companies and institutions in the future. So I want to give you an opportunity from your perspectives as an artist or as leaders of your different foundations. How do you see this moving forward, aside from very positive, which I think all of us here agree that is something very good for all of us. But Claire, I don't know if you want to start.
It's a tricky subject. I think that much like YouTube kind of moved the focus from sort of large creative corporation kind of things to the individual, I feel like AI and Web3 do something similar in that they empower the individual to put their vision and their work out there, and brands are going to have to kind of adjust for that. Like, I was thinking about if you had a major fashion house, allow maybe one of their patterns, one of their more iconic patterns, to be used as a mixable sort of thing in digital fashion with augmented reality, with AR. If they allowed AI artists, for example, to use that in making these fashion items that could be monetized in some way. Part of that could go back to them through like a royalty kind of structure. Some small amount could go back per transaction, and then it benefits everyone, right? Because it extends their legacy. It invites people in to be creative and to customize, personalize, which I think is going to be a big part of our immediate future. And everyone gets a little bit of the revenue share from that as well. So to sort of short answer your question, I feel like the focus is moving from sort of large groups of think to individual tastes, and that there are ways for brands and IP to kind of share in that future. Just have to figure them out.
I completely agree with you, Claire. And that's a very personal question. From a wider perspective, I personally see the arrival of all what surrounds what we call Web3 as a real game changer in the industry. That's not like the move we did from Web 1 to Web 2. That has the power of, like, when electricity arrived to the world. I really think that what the Web 3 can offer is absolutely game changer in all industries. It's going to change a lot of business models. It's going to change the way we understand the economy. And every single industry will be moved by Web3 possibilities and challenges. And if we now see it like something, nice to have, shorter than we expect, it's gonna become personal and industrial challenges if we don't start working on that.
I'm kind of excited and terrified about where this is all going. I live in New York City, so I imagine, within 5 or 10 years, none of us are going to have phones anymore. We're going to have AR glasses, and you'll be able to walk through Times Square and switch something so you have live stable diffusion, and everyone you see can be an anime character, and then you can switch another button so that it takes all the data sets of historical New York, geolocated, and you can just be in like 1940s New York. So everywhere you look, it's the old photos are mapped spatially, and so you can like be in like a very psychedelic experience where everyone's an anime character and you're like in 1940s black and white New York City. I think, and then just take that idea and just go in any direction. So I think it's going to, like as Claire said, it's going to be very individualistic, it's very customizable, but that means everyone's going to have their own experience of reality, that it's not like a shared reality. Now I think, okay, you go on the subway and everyone's looking at their phone, but in the future everyone will be looking up, but who knows what they're actually experiencing or looking at, and everyone's going to be an NPC in their, dreamlike walking state. So technically and creatively, I think there's so much opportunity, but like as a society, I'm really unsure of like if there's any way to stop this.
Well, it's definitely a very exciting time to be alive, no? And to be experiencing this firsthand and being able to live it. So our time is up. I want to thank all our panelists. I do invite all of you to go see the exhibit and to maybe with a little bit more understanding of what it's about, to enjoy the pieces and to talk to Oliver to see why he picked a piece. Claire, we don't have you here, but thank you for being with us with your avatar.
Thanks so much for, it's my first time using it out live, so.
Good to see you.
It worked. It just froze a couple of times, but aside from that, it happens on our phones as well, but it looked great. So thank you very much, everyone.